Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the Dillard Auditorium of the Anderson Center on the campus of Winston-Salem State University. Let me start by saying thank you to Winston-Salem State for hosting us this evening. My name is Ed McNeil. I'm Director of Marketing and Communications for the City of Winston-Salem. And we're here this evening to discuss an increase in violent crime dating back to early 2013. Before we introduce our panel, we'd like to offer an opportunity to hear from Mayor and members of the City Council. Councilmember Taylor, if you would join us here and introduce our council if they'd like to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is James Taylor, and I am one of your representatives on the Winston-Salem City Council, representing the sensational Southeast Ward. It's good to look over in the audience and see so many bright-eyed and bushy-tailed faces that are here to talk about, how we can get better as a city and progress with reducing violent crime in our city. I'm joined by a number of the members of the Winston-Salem City Council, and I believe I saw one of our state representatives, and just as a matter of protocol, I'll recognize them, and if you want to have any words, please feel free. From the North Ward, we have Councilmember Denise Adams. From the East Ward, we have Councilmember Derwin Montgomery. The Southwest Ward, we have Councilmember Dan Bessie. And we're joined also by State Representative Ed Haynes, who we also have our city manager, Mr. Lee Garrity. And Mr. Garrity helps us to run our city. We'll move forward with the protocol and introducing our panel, but what I want to do is kind of set a perspective. And, public safety, we believe, is the single most important service that the city of Winston-Salem provides. We are here to talk about stopping the violence and get your ideas, thoughts, and concerns on how to do that. We need to address our challenges, but we also need to talk just a little bit about some of the success we've seen in 2013. When it comes to crime, if you look at property crimes have decreased in the city of Winston-Salem by 4.9%. And when I say property crimes, I mean burglary, larceny, motor vehicle theft. We've also seen a decrease in violent crimes by 5.9%. And when I mean violent crimes, I say rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. But it is no secret that we have seen an uptick in homicides here in the city of Winston-Salem. To put that in perspective, last year in 2012, we had 8 homicides. In 2013, we had 15 homicides. And again, to give us some more perspective, if you look at some of the other major cities in North Carolina, Greensboro had 28 homicides, Durham had 32 homicides in 2013, and Charlotte had 52 homicides in 2013. But we recognize that we are not Durham, we are not Charlotte, and we are not Greensboro, and one homicide is one homicide too many. And we don't want to be Durham, Charlotte, or Greensboro. So thank you for being here to help us address our concerns. I'd like to introduce the panel, and I don't believe that they are seated in any kind of order, so when I do call you, please raise your hand so that the members of the audience are able to recognize you in case they have any questions or concerns, anything they may want to address. We have with us our police chief, Chief Barry Roundtree. One of my favorite assistant district attorneys, Mr. Derek Gray. We have the good Bishop Todd Fulton, who is with Mount Moriah Outreach Center. He's also with the Ministers Conference. Bishop Fulton does a lot in our community. Thank you for recognizing him. We have a bright and up-and-coming star. She's very knowledgeable about what she's doing. Dr. Kimya Dennis. She is the assistant professor of sociology at Salem College. Dr. Dennis, did you raise your hand so we can see you? Thank you. We also have Dr. Dawn Henderson. She is the assistant professor of psychological sciences here on the great campus of Winston-Salem State University. In adult literacy from Forsyth Tech Community College, we have Dean Michael Harris. With Project Reentry, we have Michael Thomas. We have a parent, and please give her a round of applause because she's experienced some hardship and she's going to give us some perspective on some of the things that she's learned here in the city She's the parent of one of the victims of a homicide here in Winston-Salem. Please give a round of applause for Ms. Monica Ross. Also, he's here representing himself, but he'll tell you a little bit about Southside Rise and why he's here, Mr. Steve Fleming. Also representing Southside Rise and representing himself, Mr. Chris Washington. And with Northwest Piedmont Service Corps, Mr. Aaron Rutherford. Now, we called a lot of names and members of the community. I want you to know that please feel free to step up to the mic, ask a question. We don't want to leave here just with a bunch of talk and a bunch of rhetoric. We want to get some concrete things done in our city. And the reason why we have our elected officials in place, because we want them to hear what it is that we're experiencing. And we expect them to go back and create legislation, provide some funding to foundations and organizations who could use funding in order to be successful with reentry in our community, and also create policy if necessary. So if you have any questions, line up to the mic. We'll call you one at a time. And let's start with the panel. Panel, we'll just go down and we'll start on the far end and work our way back to this side. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
All right. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Michael Thomas, and I'm the Project Reentry Program Coordinator. Project Reentry is the only program of its kind in North Carolina that provides pre- to post-release services, meaning we're currently working in 13 North Carolina prisons where we provide pre-release services, and once the individuals, the guys and the gals, have completed our 13-week cycle pre-release, they have earned post-release services. Therefore, we are the bridge from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, formerly known as Department of Correction, to the community. So upon completion and upon their release, they have earned a post-release appointment within 24 hours of the very next business day. I'm passionate about this program, have been involved for the last 10 years because I am a former offender who had to secure employment here in North Carolina when I was told that it would not happen due to my record. Our participants are going to work at such a rapid rate. Even in 2013, we had 127 recently released convicted felons to go to work here in Winston-Salem. So there's work out here for the former offender once they believe in themselves and they are indeed prepared prior to. That is the key component. Preparation prior to release brings on success post-release. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Washington.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah. I'm on the behalf of Southside Ride, Dave Moore's program for adolescents who going down the wrong road. I'm like a poster child of trying to get the community and the kids back on the right track. I helped my uncle Dave Moore out going to the schools and just trying to just understand like what's really going on in society today. Me myself growing up, I didn't have any role models. I didn't have no father figure. I had one father figure. That was a guy named Ben Pickett at the Sim Center in the Gardens. And there's guys like him and Dave Moore that mentored us and tried their best even when we didn't listen to them. I respect and I honor those two guys as fathers of the community, and I just want to just say my piece from a person who grew up in poverty, who's lived this life nobody else lived before. But I ain't gonna talk your head off. I'm gonna pass the mic down, and we're gonna talk about this a little later.
All right, my name's Steve Fleming. You know, I'm a painter. I'm here representing Southside Rise on behalf of David Moore. And so tell you a little bit about myself. Basically what I do, I'm a painter, the best painter. So you need me, you know, holler at me after this. And I read. It ain't a book I ain't read, you know, everything. So, and you know, I'm a poetry writer. I write poetry. I just got through doing 6.5 years. My brother, he just got through doing, right here on the front row, Key, he just got through doing 5.5. My mother just came home from doing about, 12 years. My dad just came from doing 16. So I'm here to try to break this cycle.
Come on.
You know what I mean?
Come on.
And so,
That's what's up.
so pretty much, I feel like I was selected to come, so why not come to a place where it's important people? I feel like I'm around a whole bunch of people who can make a change out here. So, you know, my objective is to be heard and find a solution. So that's it.
Okay. All right.
Hi, I'm Kimia Dennis. I'm Assistant Professor and Coordinator of Criminal Studies for the Department of Sociology and Criminal Studies at Salem College. My research and community work involves law enforcement and mental health and black men and suicide and self-harm. So hopefully we can all combine efforts to see what we can do to not just talk about it, but get involved in some action as well. Thank you.
All right.
Todd Fulton, pastor at Mount Moriah Outreach Center. I am the second vice president for the Ministers Conference of Winston-Salem and vicinity. I am a male mentor in the Forsyth County Schools, and I'm here because I am a warrior for social justice. And I believe that we can make a difference in our community. You know, clapping is good and having panels are good, but when I go to the schools, we're missing our people. Our people who need to read to kids, our people who need to take time. We're on the football field, but we're missing in the PTA. We're missing in the school system, reading to our kids who are illiterate. So I want to challenge everyone tonight to donate your time and your talent.
My name is Derek Gray. I'm one of the assistant district attorneys here in Forsyth County. I work for the elected DA, Mr. Jim O'Neill. Specifically within the office, I prosecute everything from arsons, robberies, serious assaults, breaking and enterings. Even been given a murder case come up here recently. I've been in the DA's office since 2008, September 2008. Originally from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm glad I was invited here by Mr. Taylor and I believe Ms. Joyner, but thank you. Willing to accept and answer any questions that I can.
Hi, my name is Monica Ross. I'm the parent of Dante Ross. My son was the number 6 homicide last year, September 12, 2013. I lost my son, and I just want to say, please, everybody need to get together and just stop the violence.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Rutherford. I'm here on the behalf of the Northwest Piedmont Service Corps, where I represent Mr. Reginald McCaskill, Mr. Ron McCrae, Mr. Myers, and I just want to say they gave me a second chance in life because before I got there, nobody else would give me a job, and they've taught me a lot of things from picking up trash to how to do construction, lay mulch, all kind of things, and I want to thank them for giving me a second chance. And I'm from the north side of town, like the Boston, Cherry Street area, and I would like my man down there said, the only role model we had was Mr. Bill English that taught us things about, he taught us how to play basketball and everything, so I guess I'm here to just give my opinion on how to stop the violence and help our city, I guess. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike Harris, the Dean of Adult Literacy at Forsyth Tech, and I'm responsible for the GED program in English as a second language program, as well as short-term training program. And Forsyth Tech, on behalf of Gary Green and the Board of Trustees, we are committed to this cause. We recognize it has been stated that education is the pathway. We are a second option, or another option if you want to, for a person who has been convicted. A lot of individuals can start their own business. There is an option, education is the way. But one thing that Forsyth Tech recognizes and is always open to is partnership. These individuals need support. We have recognized that when students come back to college, that community support or wraparound services has to be there. As this gentleman indicated, individuals, male and female, do need that mentorship. So on behalf of Forsyth Tech, I'm glad to be here and look forward to your questions.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Dawn X. Henderson. I'm currently an assistant professor in the Department of Psychological Sciences here at Winston-Salem State University. My particular research really focuses on alternatives to out-of-school suspension. I'm an avid believer in trying to find pathways for young people, particularly youth, to stay connected to school, to stay connected to their community, because when they are connected to their school and their community, they live more thriving lives and they can continue to contribute to their community. I'm here today because I think my journey, I grew up in a place called Camden, New Jersey. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Camden, New Jersey. But Camden is a place like some places here in Winston-Salem. And I was a young person who was struggling myself, and I had individuals in my community, adults. I had institutions like schools and after-school centers that I could go to and connect to help me navigate through and be a doctor here today. So my research focuses on youth because I believe that they are the future. Thank you.
Good evening. Last but not least, my name is Chief Barry Roundtree. I serve as the Chief of Police for the City of Winston-Salem Police Department. I've been employed with the City of Winston-Salem since January 25th, 1988. Of course, the Police Department is responsible for keeping this community safe, providing full service law enforcement services to the citizens of Winston-Salem. Not only am I the Chief of Police, but I also serve as a school tutor. I serve as a Boy Scout, a den leader. I also serve as a football coach, a male mentor, and a part-time instructor. So I'm glad to be here, and I'll be glad to answer your questions.
And because I see some new people who just entered the room, I will restate that my name is James Taylor. I'm City Councilman of the Southeast Ward, and I also serve as Chairman of Public Safety for here in the City of Winston-Salem. And I do want to restate the format of today's forum. Anybody who has questions, concerns, anything they want to address as it relates to dealing with violent crime here in our community, please come down to the microphones. I'm going to get the forum started off with a question or two. We didn't come to sit here and talk to you from a soapbox. We want to hear from you. So with that being said, I'll direct this question to all of our panelists, and then we'll start breaking down who we want to hear from specifically. We'll start the forum with the question about violent crimes. Why? We're seeing an increase in gun violence that's leading to an increase in homicides. So I want to ask the entire panel, why do you believe, from your experience, we're seeing this increase in violent crime? And Chief Roundtree, since you have just spoken, we'll start back from the other end, Mr. Thomas.
I was just having a discussion with someone not moments ago, and it was shared that, unfortunately, unlike the old days, where you would meet at 3 o'clock and you would have a square-off fist-to-fist, fist-to-cuffs, whatever you want to call it. Today, everybody has too much pride, and it's easier to pull a trigger, period, to settle a battle. And it's just become territorial. It's unfortunate that so many guns are so readily available in our communities, and people just have an easy access to a weapon. For them, it's easier, and I say them, anybody who's going to just pull a trigger versus fighting or talking it out or whatever the case may be, they have access to it, and they'd rather pull the trigger than to deal with it. And I think that has a lot to do with some degree of parenting, because parenting would teach a child how to work through, talk through issues versus resorting to violence. And that is my opinion on that, and I'll pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Fleming and Mr. Washington, I'm born and raised on the south side of Winston-Salem. And one of the reasons why I was excited to have you on this panel, because I know you're going to bring a different perspective and a fresh flavor to what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. So give us your thoughts.
They say it takes a village to raise a child. Going on what he said, it's easier said than done. Growing up in poverty and you trying to be the next dude or the next guy on the block, and you really ain't got no kind of guidelines and protocols in your life, you're going to make the wrong mistakes. My mama taught me well. She taught me everything she knew. But growing up the way I did, it makes me think differently about the whole world. I am a felon. I have a record. It's always hard for me to get a job. They have programs out here for us, and some of them do work, but we need more programs. We need more programs because they charge us, they go back on our record and charge us with something we got in trouble for the day for, which is double jeopardy in my book. I don't know about nobody else, but if you're gonna help us, help us. Prison is not no place where you go to get better at something good. You go to prison to get better at the same thing you was doing to get put in jail. It doesn't help us to get a felon and come back out in society and y'all telling us we're gonna help, but when I put my hand out, you pulling your hand back. Why should I be penalized for something I did when I was young? Why can't it be another door that opens when this door closed? And y'all wonder why we back and forth in jail because we didn't have no options. We got to go back to the thing that got us in trouble in the first place. Ain't nobody in this building right now with a child is going to sit there and watch their child starve. Bills coming every month. It do not stop. It get cold outside. You got to have heat. A person living in crime and doing the things that they did to get in trouble only going to go back to the same thing they know what to do. Give us the option. The only way President Obama is President Obama because his parents and the community made a path for him to be the president. We got to start setting paths for the youth so we can have another black president, so we can have another whatever that's great out here. We have to buckle down, talk to these kids, teach them, give them a jewel. Don't just teach them nothing and push them out in the world. Give them jewels to learn from. I've experienced so much backlash from my past that I feel like there's no other way. But God always have another way for you. That's right. He always have another way for you. Right now in my life, I'm writing a book. I wrote a book in 2008 when I was incarcerated. I had it this whole time sitting in my house not knowing what I got. I gave it to my friend in LA. This dude from Sony called me the other night and he want to do a movie behind my life. Come on, man. I'm not asking nobody for no help, no sponsors to do this movie or none of that. But I'm just letting you know that it took all this time for me to keep bumping my head because nobody's helping. Nobody's helping the way they say they help. I had a list when I came home with all the jobs that were hiring felons when I came home. Every last job say they don't hire felons. What am I supposed to do? What do I supposed to do? Get in trouble again so y'all can make money off me every day in prison. I ain't dumb. I know the trick. I know the trick. That's why they call it a trap. I ain't 31 for nothing. You understand what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is, please, for our future, open more doors for people who get in trouble. Everybody get in trouble. Everybody have the past. Everybody that done stuff. Some people ain't got caught for it. They made it out. Some of us don't make it out. The 15 murders last year, I know 10 of them. I know 10 of them. You don't think I'm tired of this? You don't think my brothers, my sisters tired of going to jail, getting killed, going to funerals, making t-shirts? You don't think I get tired of that? Open more doors. That's all I'm asking, open more doors.
Thank you. Mr. Fleming, talk to us, sir.
All right. Well, me, I feel like it's an increase in violent crimes because it's a decrease in employment opportunities. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, like, if the only time, like I was telling Mr. Thomas right here before we came up here, if the only time I see the police is when they putting handcuffs on me, you know what I mean? It's a problem, you know what I'm saying? It's cold outside. I know I want to see them passing out blankets too. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I feel like each one teach one according to your own knowledge. You know, you can only teach somebody according to the things you know. You can't teach what you think you know. 1 + 1 is 2. You know what I'm saying? So pretty much what I'm saying is, like, you got to kill a problem, you got to start at the root. You know what I mean? You got to come to where the problem has originated at. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Like, so the community, you want to know what's going on in the hood, come to the hood. You know what I mean? Like, if the only time I see a DA or a judge is when I'm in court, that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't take the purpose, like, I don't know, like, who none of y'all are. I'm from Cleveland, 17th Street, like, I'm out there, like, that's, you know, I'm every day, and I haven't seen none of y'all in the hood. You know what I'm saying? I don't see no hood, no advocates, you know, political advocates for the hood out here. Well, I'm willing to step up and do it, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So I feel like to kill the problem, you got to talk to the people. First, you got to get to the root. All this trying to figure out solutions from the top, nah, you got to nip the bud, you know what I mean? If you don't nip the bud, it's a wrap, you know what I'm saying? That's peace on that, though.
I appreciate your words, Mr. Fleming, and I've made note of it. We've heard, and we'll do a better job going forward. Dr. Dennis, you bring an interesting perspective as well. Talk to us.
Well, when we talk about increases and decreases in violence, they happen for a lot of different reasons. A lot of times people want one reason why it's happening, and that's just not how the world works, which is why we do research on these topics. But in the larger scheme of it all, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and no matter where you are, it's the same thing that people often talk about. It's a culture where violence is deemed acceptable. And so on one end, when we talk about, well, like you said, you don't see certain people in the hood, but this isn't just about certain neighborhoods either. So we have to be honest. On one end, people want to talk about what's happening in certain neighborhoods, and on the other end, people get mad when you're only talking about certain neighborhoods. If we're going to look at violence, we want to look at it at a larger scheme and not just focus on particular communities, because there's things happening all over Winston-Salem, and we don't just want to narrow the path to a certain neighborhood, because technically that's the same kind of racial profiling and social class profiling that the legal system and the law enforcement system gets criticized for anyway. So if we're going to talk about looking at violence, we need to look at it at a larger scale and not just certain neighborhoods only. So I think there's a lot that goes into it. It's not a quick answer and it's not a quick solution.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis. And Bishop Fulton, everybody knows you. You bring the faith-based aspect to it. So talk to us a little bit about from your perspective.
Well, my perspective is I grew up in Happy Hill Gardens with a single parent home, but life is about choices. There were a lot of opportunities that maybe or may not offer to me, but I decided that I wanted more than where I was living. So because of some of the choices that I've made, wrong, right, and indifferent, God has connected me with people and put me in places that I never thought that I would be in. But in order to have a different outcome with your life, first of all, you got to have a different mindset. Crime doesn't come from a dense population, but from abuse of opportunity. When we have jobs, when we have the opportunity to expand our intellectual with education, then we're going to produce better lives and better citizens. Now, we can all sit here and discuss what's wrong in the black neighborhood, what's wrong in the white neighborhood, but the question is, how many of us are stepping up to the pump and saying, I'm going to take one kid and make a difference? The Ministers Conference has sponsored Ashley Elementary School, and we need mentors. We need mentors for kids who are in the 4th, 5th, 6th grade. But it's almost like pulling teeth when you try and get other pastors, when you try and get black men from our community, when you try and get, and the only way I know to say it is just to say it. It's disgusting for me to see more white people coming out for the backpack program for our kids. I'm not anti-white, I'm pro-black. But it's disgusting for me to see other folk who have more interest in our kids than we do. I see the Nation of Islam here, I see the Masons here, I see preachers, I see community activists. But the question is, when are we going to step up to the plate for ourselves and our community? So my whole outlook is, the problem is we're all victims or products of our environment, but we don't have to stay victims and products of our environment. I told you I'm from Happy Hill Gardens, but I went on to go back to school and get me an education. I was part of the board to help select the police chief of Winston-Salem, put there by our city manager and others. So how do I go from the projects to being on the board to select the police chief? How do I go from being in the hood to being a pastor? Life is about choices. We got to quit blaming other folk, and we got to buy into empowering ourselves.
That's right.
At my church, we have a community garden. We plant and grow food. There are a lot of things we may not be able to do, but nobody can stop me from putting a seed in God's earth, allowing that seed to come forth, taking that fruit or vegetable and say, hey, I'm going to go to the farmer's market, I'm going to go somewhere and sell what I have. Maybe you don't have an education, but God has given each and every one of us a talent, an ability to be able to rise above any situation that we may be in. So I'm going to say everything starts from within itself. We got to go back to where we came from. We came from God, so we got to go back to God if we're going to move forward.
And Mr. Gray, before you give us your comments, Bishop Fulton, you said something, and I'm all about shameless plugs, so they're for the right reasons. You mentioned a mentoring program at Ashley Elementary.
Right.
If anybody wants to volunteer for that mentoring program, tell us how we can do that. We don't want to overlook that.
You can see me, or you can go to Ashley Elementary and see the assistant principal, Bailey, and she can get you involved. And what it's going to consist of is just going to the school, giving 1 hour a week of your time. And you're going to sit there and maybe read a book with a kid, maybe help a kid with its math homework, or maybe your skills may not be fine-tuned enough to do that. You can sit there and you can talk to that kid and say, what's going on with you? How are things at home? If we're going to make a difference, we got to start at the grassroots levels.
All right. And Mr. Gray, you're fighting the battle in the legal field. I know you see things that we all don't see every day. I mean, I watch Law and Order. I used to work in the juvenile justice system. I saw things, but not like you see them on a daily basis. So tell us from your perspective, how can we deal with some of the violent crime in our community, and why is it occurring?
First and foremost, I probably should have sat on the other side of Minister Fulton, because it's no fun following him up. But I'm going to give a little background about myself. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. I came from a home that had 2 caring parents. They're still together, still love each other. My mom was the principal of my middle school. My dad was the principal of my high school. So I was kind of directed in a certain path. Also, I was really into basketball, so I was focused in that way. When I hear Chris speak and talks about lack of options, I can kind of see how that would be an issue. I mean, I didn't have a choice, so to speak, because my dad didn't play, but I think that had I not been directed in a certain way, had I not been geared to make good grades, not because I necessarily wanted to at the time, because I didn't have a choice if I wanted to play basketball. Hindsight being 20/20, when you look back on that and you see the advantages that you had in relation to some people that didn't have the 2-parent households with educated parents at the helm of it, you can see how things turn out to be the way they are. Now, obviously in the DA's office, I'm dealing with the community. And based on my observation, what I see a lot of are the single-parent households. And it's hard to raise a child. It's hard to direct an individual and put morals and values in them when you have to work 24/7 in order to sustain the household financially. So when you have that, and you have an individual essentially raising himself or herself, or having their friends or cousins or whoever essentially input those values and instill those values in them, I think you're going to have an increase in violence. I think you're going to have an increase in drugs. And then when you compound that with the lack of options, so it's a matter of not knowing that there's other things available. You know, for myself, even when I look back on my own mindset, like my whole thing was I wanted to play professional basketball when I was a kid. Didn't make it there, but along that path, I found other options that I was exposed to just from being exposed to different types of people. If you don't have that mindset, if you don't have those influences, you don't have those examples of people that have done something other than playing professional sports or becoming a drug dealer, and I mean that's the example that's right in front of you, and you see that they're making money and they're driving a nice car and they're getting attention from females or whatever it may be. I think that is kind of what's reflected in what you're seeing in this violence that has been increased. So again, to piggyback on Kenya, I think it is a complex issue, but just based on what I see from the legal standpoint and the families, I'll see mothers come in and watch their sons plead in, and they'll say, I didn't raise them like this, but at the same time, if they're working full time, they didn't raise them at all. So that's just kind of the way I see it. I think that's a good start. We'll stop right there.
And Ms. Ross, you know, you've talked a little bit about what you've experienced here in the city as it relates to your son, and you also bring a unique perspective to this particular forum. Tell us your thoughts on how we get better as a city, especially experience what you've experienced here locally in Winston-Salem.
No comment.
We'll go to Mr. Rutherford. Ms. Ross, just know as a community, we all support you. And I know I should jump off of it, but we need to come together and be more tighter as a community. And I speak, I believe, for everybody that's here. We feel your pain. We feel your loss. If there's anything we can do to help out as a community, please don't hesitate to call on us. You've got the Masons here. You've got a number of organizations, the city here. Let's give her a round of applause. It takes strength to do what you did today. We thank you for being here. Mr. Rutherford, talk to us, and we'll come to the questions over in the audience.
I'll take the questions first. You want to go to the questions first?
We'll defer to the question. Please give us your name.
Hi. Oh, excuse me.
Hello.
My name is Nicole Little. I live over here in East Winston as well. I work with the City of Housing, the Winston-Salem Housing Authority with our scholarship tuition program, actually under Candace Edwards as my supervisor. And I believe she may know Mr. Harris on the board. And I specifically wanted to get up, one, to let Ms. Ross know that, yes, the community is definitely behind you. I know Shay. I went to school with Shay. I'm aware of who your son was. And I understand the situation. I lost my brother back in 2000 who was shot and killed on Liberty Street violently. And to this day, that pain doesn't go away. So I've talked to Shay on a number of occasions, as well as Sharonda, all the family that was involved. So my condolences are definitely with you. And that's what really prompted me to get up. Oftentimes, I graduated from Carver High School, and I recently graduated this past May from Wake Forest University. And being a first-generation student is one thing that it puts me in the middle of this issue. I grew up in Boston. Mr. Bill was very influential in my life as well. I live on the east side over here. But at times when I was at school, it was like I was in a bubble, and I was removed from my situation. And I have 5 siblings, and all 4 of them didn't go to school. They finally went back and graduated after me, but I often find myself saying, how did I end up this way and my siblings went another way? Some of the things that they're interested in doing, I'm not interested in doing, and that doesn't make us any different, but I think all of the factors that have been touched on brings into it. Raising a single parent household, poverty being a very big issue, financial issue. So when I see my brothers struggling because they want to leave drugs alone, they want to stop selling, they want to stop doing these things, and they go out to get a job and there are no options. They try to go to school and they can't because they can't even get financial aid due to their background being a felon. Those barriers, those roadblocks being in the way, so they have no other choice but to go back to the streets. So I experienced that and having the background of sociology and criminal justice, like I know all of this and I can't help my family. So my thing is, for those that are on the panel, and I'm aware of a lot of the agencies that are presented, Project Reentry, for SciTech, things of that nature, what is it that we can do? I look at it as a financial or poverty issue. That's just my thing. If it's poverty through the parents or if it's poverty through the children not being able to find employment, just lack of mobility. What can we do to bring, whether it be employers in the area together? We have employers such as Sweet Potatoes that work with individuals coming back into the work field, but of course they can employ everybody. And I know there are some issues in terms of employers. It's going to be some concerns with people with backgrounds, but what can we do to bring a partnership together to work with businesses here that are willing to invest in our young men and give them the opportunity that Southside Rise has been able to do with Chris and Steve, things of that nature? What can we do to make sure that Ms. Ross knows that we are behind her, and allowing her to share her story while trying to fix the problem at the same time? And that is open to everyone. So.
Is there anybody on the panel who wants to, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, indeed. First, I'd like to say that there's a couple of things that I've been wanting to say which will address your question. Employers are actually becoming more and more aware of the reentry programs and the reentry initiatives that are going on in North Carolina. The one thing that I stress and I have stressed for the last 10, 12 years working in this field is that the same amount of energy that is applied toward being in the game, and I've been in the game. I've run guns and drugs up and down the East Coast for a good many number of years as a youth, but I applied that same amount of energy toward securing gainful employment. And when you're in the game 365, 24/7. All right? You cannot put in part-time hours looking for a full-time job and blame it on your record. I'm not very proud of my rather lengthy violent criminal history, but I managed to secure employment here in North Carolina with an organization that never hired a convicted felon before because I applied that same amount of energy. I was not going to give up on me. Most of the convicted felons I've worked with over the last 10, 12 years, I would gladly change my record with theirs any day of the week, all right? It's all in you believing in yourself. Opportunities are here, there, and everywhere. It's a matter of how you strategize, how you network. There are employers who will tell you, or an individual will tell you, don't go over there because that employer ain't going to hire an ex-offender. No, that employer didn't hire you. Didn't mean he's not going to hire me. Do you understand? Because belief in yourself comes first. All right, if you do not believe in yourself, no one else can believe in you. It's simple as that. We see it every day. I've seen convictions from A to Z go to work. And I'm talking about making big money. Of course, we've got minimum wage earners, but we have people making in excess of $80,000 a year, straight out of prison, because they've applied themselves. They've gone back to school. I went to night school here in 2003, not knowing that in 2005 I'd have an office in the same building. But I was investing in me, period. And this is what we teach our participants who are realizing success. And employers, again, will tell you, well, no, we don't hire. But they've got a nephew or somebody in their family working for their company. They just don't put it out there. Employers will never broadcast. Come to us because we hire former offenders. And unlike this brother who mentioned he had a list of employers that hire former offenders, I do not subscribe to that list because I think that is a disservice to the participant. If I give this brother a list of 10 employers that say we hire convicted felons, and he goes there with the concept that he's supposed to get a job, and then he doesn't, he went in there incorrectly, and now that's his justification for going back to selling dope. I'm not saying you personally, you understand what I'm saying? So that's a disservice. You knock on every single door. Had I not knocked on every single door, I'd have not been hired by an organization who never hired a convicted felon before. So period, it's a matter of putting in the work. Putting in the work. Employers, and they will, again, will not publicize, come to us because we hire ex-offenders. They're not going to do that. But they will hire former offenders, and we see it every day. 127 in 2013 here in Winston, and over 500 throughout the state that we know of have gone to work. There's work out here, but you got to put in the work.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Got to put in the work.
If we can keep our answers
I'm
as
sorry,
brief. No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, it's not your fault. You gave us what we asked for.
I get to preaching, I'm sorry.
Mr. Washington, we're going to come back to you in 1 second. We'll let Ms. Reed. Ms. Reed, give us your name, ask your question, please. We want to try to get it all moving.
Okay. Marvel Reed, President of Northeast Winston Neighborhood Association. Can I have a two-parter question, please?
Please, ask away.
Okay. First, I would like to ask of Chief Roundtree, where are the murders most concentrated? What area? In the east area, east, north, south, west?
Ms. Reed, do you want to go ahead and ask the second part of your question as well?
And my second part of the question, a heart go out to you, Ms. Ross. I appreciate what you said, Pastor, but it seems like the other part of the panel are people who do something after the fact. I'm concerned about what happens in East Winston to prevent that. We know that the mindset, but these kids are being grabbed up, snatched up very early on. And like I say, again, thank you. But I like, when I hear stop the violence, I hear prevention, not wait till it happened to these kids. So who amongst these people can help us in our community?
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Chief, I think the first question was, where are the homicides concentrated?
Okay. I don't have the exact locations with me tonight, but they were not concentrated in any particular area or any parts of the city. They were pretty much spread across the city for 2013.
And Ms. Reed, we'll try to get you a more specific answer sometime in the future. And I know how to contact you, and you know how to contact me. Is there anybody on the panel before we let Mr. Stevenson speak who wants to?
To Ms. Reba?
Dean Harris?
Okay. I agree with what you're saying. And the reason that I'm here, and like you said, it happens. Forsyth Tech works with the Winston-Salem Forsyth Public Schools and the faith-based community. The young gentleman down there said it takes a village. What can we do? We are trying to partner at the community college all the way down to middle schools because we recognize the exposure. Everything has been said about it takes a village. I really appreciate that it does. But we recognize that with that parent involvement, we do a family literacy program and have tried to do it across the city. One thing is awareness, and I think this forum is about this. We recognize that at an early age it needs to start. And we heard about the single parent household, and we heard about mentoring. We have all that at Forsyth Tech, but at different levels and through the school system. And what I don't have an answer to you, but my thing is, how do we engage? We got to go to that it takes a village concept. We want to look at the systems that we have in place. A lot of individuals do not choose to participate in the system, or we don't educate. And that's my answer, is that we got to participate in what we have in place. And we can come with something, but I just want to encourage that you're right. It starts early. And from Forsyth Tech, we recognize all the way down from elementary all the way through that we have to be involved.
We'll take one more response, Bishop Fulton.
Ms. Reeves, I want to address your question or comment. I don't need a map or a grid to know that the violence is happening in the neighborhood of black and brown people. If it were on the west side of town, we wouldn't be sitting here because things would have already been implemented to do something about it. So with that being said, We know where the crimes are. We know the homicides are being taken place. I worked in collaboration with Father Flager out of Chicago. They had 500 homicides on the east side of Chicago. Kids couldn't go outside and play because drive-by gangbanging. It's going to take major effort on all of our parts. And we got a right as taxpayers and as citizens to shift some of that burden on our elected officials.
That's right.
To say that we want to see jobs in our community. We got a right to say that we want to see opportunities there. They've done a great job, and there's always room for improvement, but we want to keep pushing for what we need in our communities. Then you go into the next question.
I'm gonna make an executive decision here, and I'm gonna move to the audience. And I promise you, I'm a man of my word. I will come back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's all right.
Yes, sir.
Apologies, brother. I know you had something good to say. Antonio Stevenson. I work for Goodwill. I run a youth intervention program, and I think that we have some people in this room that can change some policies that can get some kids some jobs. That's why the killings are going on, because these kids want money. And at the end of the day, they're willing to do anything to get it. And I think the only entity that's not here today, at least I haven't seen anybody from the school system, because these kids are getting suspended long term and expelled and are being forgotten about. And I'm telling you this because my caseload consists of about 30 kids that have nowhere to go from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So they hustle. So the policymakers in the room need to change some policies, because McDonald's won't even hire these kids. I agree with Mike. I work with Mike every day, 5 days a week. So you do have to be diligent when you're trying to get a job. But be it as it may, when these kids walk up with their pants sagging, no matter how much coaching we give them, and they have, you know, certain things that employers just say no to right away, we try to change that, but they are etched in stone with some of these kids. These kids cannot stop smoking marijuana. I can babysit them, kidnap them, they're not gonna pass that drug test. We need some policy changes, because these kids get a job, maybe they will put the guns down, maybe they will put the weed down, but at the end of the day, somebody's gonna have to say, you know what, let me take a chance on this young black Hispanic kid. I'm not wishing anything on anyone, but so far no white kid has been killed, and if one was, all this would stop. Thank you.
Before we go to our next question, we'll go to Dr. Henderson.
I just want to actually address a couple of questions. First, I am trained as a community psychologist. And as a community psychologist, we look at behavior beyond the victim. We look at behavior as a multi-systems kind of perspective. I want to talk about Ms. Reed and actually go to the young man who just talked about it, and even go back to the young gentleman who talked about pathways and looking deeper. The idea is that it does take a village to raise a child, but we have to understand what that village is and who are the actors in that village. And in that, a lot of that is mental health professionals, people who are advocates, community advocates, young brothers who are out there on the streets who can speak the language of other young brothers to help bring them into our institutions, into our organizations to get services. But it requires multiple systems to let go of their egos, to let go of their territories, and come together and say, we want to help eradicate these issues in our community. And so that's a deeper question. That sometimes has to do with politics. It has to do with pride of organizations and institutions. The other part of that is talking about, I don't know if anybody addressed this, but the health and the prenatal health. You talk about violence. There are studies that say when women don't have access to correct nutrition, to seeing their doctors regularly, to making sure they get their nutrients when they're carrying a child. That leads to heightened levels of aggression. And you can see those levels of aggression manifest as early as 2 years of age. So the other part, you talked about prevention. We need to also make sure that our women who are pregnant and carrying children have access to adequate health care, so they have less stress in their lives, so they can make sure they're getting their meals on a daily basis and those different types of care, so that when they bring that child into the world, we're at least increasing their opportunities to be less involved in aggressive type mentality or behavior.
Mr. Malone, before I come to you, we've got some burning comments on the end from Mr. Fleming.
Say they burn.
Burning. Go and get him out. Yes, sir. We want to hear from you.
But what I was going to say, y'all keep talking about a village, how it takes a village. You know what I'm saying? Guns take villages too. Drugs take villages too. So the objective should be, you know what I'm saying, how do you keep the drugs from getting into the village? How do you keep the guns from getting into the village? Because you got to understand, you know what I mean? Because what you got to understand is this, if the guns don't stop popping up, if the drugs don't stop popping up, the bodies ain't gonna stop popping up. The violence ain't gonna stop. You know what I'm saying? Drugs, that's like a violent motivator. And I feel like it's, your network is your net worth. Like who you know get you in, what you know keep you in. If you want to be a doctor, learn the things you need to know to be a doctor and surround yourself around people in the medical field. You know what I'm saying? You got to surround yourself around the people that shares your interests. You know what I'm saying? But it's hard when you don't see nobody. If all you see is thugs, what you gonna grow up to be? A gangster, a thug, you know what I'm saying? So you got to keep the stuff out the village. You can't correct the inside of the village because all this negative energy is flowing inside of it, you know what I'm saying? So you got to barricade the village and keep all that madness out.
That's a good point, Mr. Fleming. Hey, Bishop Fulton, I'm coming to you. Mr. Malone, give us your name, please.
Good evening. I'm Willie Malone. And first, I would like to thank you all for coming out and spending this time with the community so that we can resolve these issues. And another thing is that the young man is right. We have to work from the inside out. This is where it starts from within. And my question is, now I can remember when I was coming up, there used to be truant officers. Even as today now, when I'm doing school hours, you can go up and down any one of these streets and see young people who you know should be in school, and they're not in school. And so when they're not in school and they're just walking the streets, something to do. It's out there, like the young man was saying, it's out there for them, but if they're out in the streets and they should be in school, if they're suspended, they should be at home, then who is monitoring these children while they're walking the streets? And I know the police see them just like I see them. I'm not blind, they're not blind. Now you see a 14-year-old that should be in school, you see him walking down the street and just nothing? I we have so much truancy that no one is policing that. We don't want to start profiling people, but if you know, be they black, yellow, green, orange, polka dot, and you know they're supposed to be in school, then they should be questioned. What is your reason for being out here today? As a law enforcement officer, you should be able to address that question to them. And if they're suspended, then why aren't you at home? Why can't something be done with that? That's my question.
Mr. Grady, you want to touch on that?
I can touch on that a little bit. From the legal side of things, we do have a truancy court that operates to serve that purpose of exactly what you're talking about. We monitor the absences of the kids, and to the extent that they don't have a certain number of excused absences, or to the extent that the parents don't have a justified excuse as to why the kids aren't going to school, there are legal ramifications for that. At the end of the day, it's going to be on the parent, unfortunately. It comes back to the parent. They're the ones that actually are looking at legal charges, potentially. We can threaten the kids all day, but to the extent that they're not showing up to school, it's tough.
So you're saying that when our law enforcement officers see juveniles on the street that should be in school, there's nothing they can do?
You're going to have to address Mr. Roundtree on that one as far as what law enforcement can do when they see kids on the street.
Chief Roundtree.
Well, I guess that's a yes and no to your question. You know, things are different now than they were years ago. The police just can't stop and pick up kids and transport them to different locations, not knowing who that person is and the reason why they are there. Yes, we can stop and talk to anybody, but again, we don't want to be accused of profiling anybody either just because a young person is walking down the street. There are rules and regulations that the police have to follow also. But I do understand where you're coming from. I understand your frustration. But the bottom line is the parents have a lot of responsibility where they should be accountable for where their children are also.
And Mr. Malone, I will add, North Carolina is one of 2 states, New York is the other state, where we charge juveniles as adults at the age of 16. So thereby, young folks have the ability to drop out of school at age 16, and nobody can make them go. So again, our state legislator was in the room, and I thought Mr. Stevenson talked about our policymakers need to make policy. And that's the reason why I'm here. That's the reason why they're here. We're going to be accountable to you. And I always say, if you tell me to do something and I don't do it, I don't address it, don't vote for me. Because we need somebody who's going to do a better job. But give me an opportunity to work for you, and that's why I'm here. And every time you speak, I'm stroking my pen, and we're going to leave here with some concrete results on how we move forward as a community. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Nikita McDaniel, and I am simply a citizen of Winston-Salem, and I want to say something. This young man, Mr. Fleming, said something that was very key about, you know, us working in the neighborhoods and the people that are creating these programs really not really being on the ground in the communities to really know what's going on. So we're creating programs as solutions to things, and we're not really involving people that it's affecting, in my opinion. So, you know, we always say this in our work: if you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us begin work together. So on the ground, and I'm a community organizer, I work throughout different neighborhoods in the city, and we believe in people creating solutions from the inside out, not from the outside in. So we all have a place in this work, but it's a lot of us who sit on a lot of committees and we chair a lot of boards where a lot of decisions are made, and you people that are sitting up on this board are wonderful people. And what I try to do, even in my community work, is invite community people to sit in on some of these meetings, involve them in being a part of the solution from the inside out, and put them in a position where they are. So the forum that we're having today, I think, is it's a good start for us, but we got to really figure out how to get people in these places, on these boards, on these committees, so that the work can really start moving, because it's not going to move with just all of our brilliant minds and they're sitting together with all of our education and all of our good upbringing and all of that stuff. It's not going to do it. So, you know, I don't really have a question for anyone. I just have a challenge for anyone, because I wake up every day to this challenge. And my challenge is that when I go out, if I can't pull people in from community to some of these boards that people are saying, you know, come sit on this board, that's real cool, but that doesn't mean nothing to me. Because if I can't put people that I work with every day in those positions to help create those solutions, it doesn't really mean anything. So that's a challenge for the people up on the panel, a challenge for the people that are across this room, that's to me like our real solution to this work. And I don't have to, you know, it's not any finger pointing or anything. I just feel like that's part of our solution.
We all respect your passion. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir, we'll come back to this side. Give us your name.
Larry Cunningham, East Wilson. Darryl Montgomery, my council member. I'm going to address this question to Police Chief Roundtree after talking to Derek there. So my question is, as a citizen of the United States with civil rights and constitutional rights, I was told by the magistrate that I could not take out a felony warrant after someone forged my signature and take the deed to my property and forged that. They found a notary who notarized the forged signature and the deed. They took his license. After a year investigation, the Winston-Salem Police Department changed the felony warrant, which is a 14-1-22, to obtaining property by false pretense, and didn't bother to let me know anything. Now they're saying that they're through with the case, but yet still these people are still trying to take my property. So what I'm asking now, where do I turn to now? Do I go like Chris said, like I used to be back in the days, or do I still follow the proper channels?
I'll answer your question, Mr. Cunningham. I'm here. I've heard your concerns. The chief of police have heard your concerns. City manager, raise your hand, please. Mr. Lee Garrett.
I've talked to Mr. Garrett before. I talked to Angela Cummins, city attorney.
What we want to do is keep this meeting kind of germane to how we stop violent crime in the city. Please see me after the meeting. I'm a man. If you have ever called me and if I've ever addressed your concerns, please raise your hand. If I haven't called you back, if I haven't done anything, please put your hand up. My point is, I sent you a Facebook message. You stop. My point is, I'm a man of my word. We'll get it done. We'll see you after the meeting, Mr. Cunningham, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll take another one from this side.
My name's Jennifer Autry, and I'm here on behalf of Flawless Riders, which is a new organization. We're all females, and we're putting in community service out in the neighborhoods, trying to give back to the community and bring people together for a common cause. I also am now a 9-year employee at a school system. I teach 5th grade, and I have my master's degree to be a principal. And I think that everybody's concerns today boil down to resources. Either resources not being available or resources being available and not being put out to the people that truly need them. In our school system, we're failing kids because the same kids are suspended for the same things time and time again. We don't have parents' involvement in the schools. Those parents that do want to be involved, they don't have the resources to help their own child. It's a shame to me that in the community, these kids, all the way from small child in 4th, 5th grade is where I really see the concern coming up. These kids have easier access to drugs, weapons, and poor role models than they do to food. I teach, and I'm honored to teach in one of our more privileged schools, but I have taught in a school that served more underprivileged kids, and I see the same concerns across the board. The only difference now is in the school I'm in, the population of the kids that need these resources are smaller, yet they still can't get them. The backpack program that the minister spoke of, he's right. You have majority Caucasian people bringing in these supplies. And it's because they may have the funds available, but it's also, I see as a teacher, some of my own co-workers who constantly say, that's not my job, I'm not paid for that. That's where our problem comes in. Everybody passes it on to someone else. Then when you get in trouble in the court system, you order someone to pay fines. If they just stood here and told you they don't have a job, how are they going to pay fines? And then you throw in their face, if you don't pay them by a certain date, you're going back to jail. So what do? They go out, they hustle, they rob, steal, whatever they got to do to pay those fines to try to stay out of jail, but ultimately they're committing a whole nother crime. Of the 15 homicides in Winston-Salem, I was born and raised here. I graduated from Carver High School, and I still stay right where I grew up. Of those 15, I knew 9 of them. And now, of course, this boils down to a lot of races involved in it, but obviously I'm not African American, but these problems have always been evident to me from Carver High School. I was raised by a single parent mother who is a felon, but I now have 6 college degrees. So everybody does choose a path. I'm not going to say I always followed that path. I had to kind of get back on the right path, but I think the overall problem is resources. These resources out here for people that are trying to restart their life. I've seen the list of people that hire felons. He's right. You can call every one of them and they don't hire felons. And people steady push that you got to put in the same amount of energy that you put into doing wrong to doing right. I agree with that, but I also disagree with that. I have some people very close to me in my life that I see putting in that same energy, door after door being slammed in their face. And they still got to eat while every door is being slammed. They got kids that got to be clothed. They got to have nutrition. Then you turn around and at the same time, even nutrition, we're cutting food stamps. The main people that need them, cutting the benefits every time. Then you have certain crimes, now you can't get food stamps. You can't hold something against somebody but for so long. If somebody did their time, they did the crime, they did their time, how are they supposed to move on from that if every resource says, well, we're going to give it to everybody except for you?
Right.
So we not only need I think we really need to look not at writing a bunch of new policies, but look at the policies in place and who are they really there to help. A lot of the policies that are put out there to say they're here to help certain population of people are really being taken away from that because they all have an exceptions clause. Our city has, I don't know exactly, but over 200,000 people. We don't even have 1% of our population in this room. I wonder how many people are going to be in Greensboro tonight to see the concert. How many people were out there for the birthday bash yesterday? It's all in what's being put out there and made available. We need more people and more resources. We have several car clubs here. And you know, the police department, no offense, Mr. Roundtree, don't always look so kindly on us, but they also don't see the good we're doing. Taking clothes to the hood, giving clothes out, trying to help people get jobs, help them write resumes, taking Christmas presents and food to families that need it. We need more of that out here and publicized instead of policies that aren't being used.
Thank you, ma'am. And because you addressed Chief Roundtree, I'm going to give him an opportunity to speak, but you mentioned resources. You mentioned Chief Roundtree. Bishop Fulton, I haven't forgot about you. Mr. Washington, I haven't forgot about you. Okay. The police department and the city council is proposing what's called a gun buyback program. And what happens is those resources or people are seeking, you can turn guns in, and the police department will allocate a certain amount of funds per gun. It does two things. It gets gun off the streets. It puts resources in pockets of those who may need it the most. Members of the panel, after police chief speaks, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think about the gun buyback program, Chief, and how do you address the resources problem that we're talking about here in the audience?
Well, I guess the overall resources problem, that's a larger issue, a little bit larger than the police department can deal with. I will say also to her point, we also help the community as the police department. We feed families and we also give out toys for Christmas and various other events that are around the city. Just briefly on the gun buyback, that is a proposal that we have to do here in the city, a safe surrender type program or either a gun buyback program. We understand that it's not going to be the cure-all to stop violence in this city. The goal is, if we can save one life, if we get one gun or if we get 100, if it's not going to be used against someone in this room, a child, a police officer, or even some of the critics, we feel that the program would be successful. The way the program will work once it's all set up, we'll have a date set where individuals who have guns that no longer want those guns, they can turn those guns in for a cash payment. I'm not sure of the exact payment. It could be $150 for an assault weapon, $50 for a pistol, so forth and so on. But we'll have that information out. It's still in the planning phases right now. It should be in early to mid-spring when we'll have it going.
Thank you, Chief. We've got so many comments. We want to hear everybody. Members of the panel, can you address it very, very briefly because we want to get everybody in our allotted time.
All right.
Please.
I would just quickly say that the majority of gun buyback programs in the country have been unsuccessful. There was one in Australia that was deemed a success, but follow-up research has found that its success is minimal, and one of the reasons they are usually unsuccessful is that they tend to only want to buy back guns for certain communities, and they tend to want to buy them back from the people who are law-abiding citizens anyway. So the people who are the ones violating the law are watching these law-abiding citizens sell their guns, and then you get into the same cycle altogether. But again, if you want to just target certain communities, that's fine, but that doesn't mean, I mean, that's racial profiling essentially and socioeconomic profiling. So they're not successful. I don't agree with gun buyback program. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Well, I will add that there are several different opinions out here. Charlotte, Wilmington, they actually ran out of money. They had so many guns that people wanted to bring in. Here in the U.S., a lot of different cities have had them. Again, it's not going to cure everything, but if we can prevent a gun from being stolen and then being used against someone, as I stated earlier, we think that is a good success. Some of the firearms that were used in our homicides here in this city, they were stolen weapons. Even though the owner didn't commit the crime, but that gun was stolen and it was put into the hands of somebody who had ill intent. So that's the whole purpose behind it, to make this community safe. And again, it's not a cure-all, it's one step in our overall comprehensive strategy to make this community safer.
60 seconds, Mr. Fulton, Mr. Fleming, we're going back to the audience.
I want to thank, first of all, our city manager, Mr. Garrity, our council members, and our police chief for partnering with us. We need a partnership, and I think the fact that they're here tonight, it speaks volume to they want to be partners. The gun buyback program, Councilman Table, I think is certified BS. I'm not selling my gun. I'm not getting my gun up. White folks understand their right to bear arms. This ain't gonna fix nothing. I'm gonna keep my 9mm. I'm gonna keep my shotgun because I'm gonna protect what I gotta protect. With that being said, we gotta educate people. Taking the guns from people with a bad mindset, I'll just go get another gun. I'll just trade in, I'll sell this money to go buy something else, and it's not gonna solve the problem. It's putting a Band-Aid on somebody who needs stitches instead of temporary medication.
Mr. Fleming, 60 seconds.
Like you said, you can't put a Band-Aid on a war wound, you know what I'm saying? So pretty much, like you say, I feel like we straying away from the topic, man. You know, we just about to stop the violence. You know what I'm saying? Everybody kids get suspended out of school. You might get suspended out of school. That's not a violent act. It's not violent to get kicked out of school. We all probably been kicked out of school and all of that. But like I said, you got to start at the root and like uproot the problem. You got to dig, man. You know what I'm saying? Like if you ain't never been in no gang, like firsthand, you don't know the mind state or the mindset of a gangbanger. If you ain't never sold drugs, you don't know the mind state or of a drug dealer. You understand what I'm saying? So what you need to do is interact with these people, engage and communicate with these people. Bring them into your world while allowing them to bring you into theirs at the same time. You know what I mean? That's it. That's 60 seconds, man.
Great words. Yeah. We'll go to the audience on this side, and we'll come to you, sir.
Yes, my name is Ishmael Muhammad, and I agree with what the brother said about we need to play an active role in the community. I heard quite a few mention the African proverb of it takes a village. And in order for the village to be effective, because I hadn't heard that word, labels and titles have to be removed. It doesn't say it takes a church. It doesn't say it takes a mosque. It doesn't say it takes the NAACP. The African proverb said it takes a village. So we all are a part of the village, and we all play a part in raising our children, because they are all our children. I, as a person that have done a substantial amount of time in the penitentiaries from New Jersey to out here to 7 years in Georgia, I've been home 18 months. I know firsthand what we face out there in the community. You ride downtown, you see the police department, and on the building you have public safety. It doesn't say, but the public doesn't feel safe. We don't feel safe. They don't make us feel safe. I'm 44 years old. And when they get, and I drive legitimately, and when they get behind me, I still have that fear, like this cracker pull me over. Excuse me. But this is how we think. I'm telling you how we think. This is not racism thinking. This is a mindset that comes from having to deal with this firsthand. So we all have to be actively involved on a grassroots level and get out there in the trenches and get our hands dirty. The Nation of Islam proved to be successful throughout the cities, out there making it safe for the elderly to feel comfortable to walk back and forth to the store, cleaning up the community, stopping the drug selling, stopping the gang banging. We have to identify. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad said, you will never be successful in teaching the people until you speak the language of the people. Many of the youth out there, they look at a lot of you on the panel as being different from them, because many of you come from like a bougie type of mentality. So they're not going to be receptive. They're going to shut down. What can you tell me? How can you tell me not to listen to this rap music when many of your elders grew up listening to the same type of language, just in a different context? Clarence Carter, I be stroking, that's what I be doing. Yeah. And you have the audacity to tell them about things that they listen to. So we have to be careful about our approach. What do we say and how we say it, so we can raise their level of consciousness just like our level of consciousness was raised, because we were all there at one time.
Does anybody want to address Mr. Muhammad before we go to Mr. Lee?
I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Muhammad. I think a big part of our issue and our problem is we point fingers to other people, but we got to take ownership of where we are. I grew up in Happy Hill Gardens, and you know, there were drug dealers who tried to get me to sell drugs. I've never sold drugs. I won't sell drugs. It's a choice that I made. Life is about choices. And there's two people that I want you to get to know before you leave this room. That's Curtis Jackson and 50 Cent. Curtis Jackson is a real life person. And when you talk about music, brother, there's a difference between his rap music and the mindset. Curtis Jackson took a bottle of water. He goes to Coca-Cola. He shakes the bottle of water up with an idea. He says, this is called Formula 50. I want to sell it to you for $100 million. He sells the Coke bottle of water with a vitamin in it for $100 million. He's not gangbanging. He's not selling drugs, but he's selling kids BS. That I'll teach you how to stunt. I'll teach you how to hurt somebody. Curtis Jackson ain't doing that, but 50 Cent is selling us rap music that is bull. So we're going to have to become entrepreneurs. We're going to have to figure out what God gave us between our two ears that can benefit us to better ourselves. Curtis Jackson is a multi-billionaire. Why? Because he put a vitamin in some water, he shook it up, and he said, I ain't going to sell drugs, but I'm going to go sell this vitamin water. And there you have it. Entrepreneur is where it's at.
Bishop Fulton mentioned entrepreneurship, and as you speak from the audience, begin to craft your comments on how we can, what we can put our finger on and do here in the city to improve on gun violence. Mr. Lee, give us your name, sir.
Robert Leake III. I'm president of East Nine Neighborhood Association. See my colleagues over there, and president of New South Community Coalition. But first, before I make my comments, I want to send my condolences to Ms. Ross. I knew your son, Dante, Mario, Dame. We all went to school together. We grew up in East Nine together and everything. So I send my condolences to you. I do want to touch on, it's really a comment, so, and then also piggyback off how the city could help us. You know, I think somebody at on the panel said something about, I'm quick at grabbing the mic, a minister, so. But anyway, but somebody on the panel said something about you don't want to raise your profile of neighborhood in terms of, you know, the different qualities, how a neighborhood is affecting and stuff. Well, I don't know what city you live in, because, I mean, we have that in this city. And so what I want to say is that basically, as a community organizer, and Ms. Nikita McDaniel, she's from Neighborhoods, there was a lot of times that when I wanted to be on committees and et cetera, and I couldn't be because I'm from East Nine, they was like, I don't want that Negro sitting up on one of my boards because he's going to speak out. Well, when time went on, you know, I was facing inhabitable properties and illegal activity in the community. I got tired of depending on the city I got tired of on the city or rather get our houses demolished. So in my less than 1 year of my term, we was able to demolish 11 unhabitable properties. It wasn't because of the city, it was because of the community came together. So what I want to encourage the citizens in here today is that we can have all this talk and panel. I done been through community organizing work since 12 years old. I went to panel discussions, I done been to seminars, I got worksheets in my desk of how to do community asset, racism, discrimination, all that. So we can have all these panel discussions all we want to. Ain't nothing gonna work until we all in our communities get together, come together, stand up together, take power in your own community. That's number one. And then, lo and behold, when it did happen, the Mayor Otter Jones personally called me. He said, Mr. Lee? I said, yes, sir. He said, I think I want you to be on the Human Relations Commission. I said, well, Mayor, I said, well, you know, when I get on that board, I'm going to speak out still. He said, Mr. That's fine, because that is with somebody who we need. So I said, okay, so basically, lo and behold, I got on the Human Relations Commission now, but God blessed me to get on 6 more boards, and Mr. Thomas is on the board that became chairman of, or the Forsyth County Department of Fatherhood Advisory Board. But basically making my question is that we need to start look at our community organizers in our city. We have wonderful community organizers, and we need to employ those community organizers so they can help educate the folks in the community to take it back to their communities. Because you don't see a lot of young people that don't want to step up to that plate because we want to make money. And a lot of young people are not going to do what I do, that I've been doing since 12 years old for free, conversation, because they're like, it's still hard out here. So we got to really understand this. I really want to encourage all you guys out here today that if you live in a community, get involved with your community association. You know, Miss Margaret Reed, she's an advocate for the East Ward. Miss Margaret, I see her back there and stuff, and Miss Carolyn Highsmith back there. Get involved with your community, people, and start learning about, well, what the police gonna do and what my city officials gonna do, because we all have the power to change our own community. I know that for the testimony I seen in my own community. So I just wanted to just request that. But I do want to let the city know, I'm gonna sit down right quick, but I do want the city know that let's start looking at our community organizers and let's set up a program that we can hire those community organizers inside the community and educate those folks. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Time check, we've got 25 more minutes. Just want to give you a time check. I'm the moderator and the timekeeper.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Diary Richardson. I'm a hairdresser by trade and an educator. I own my own business. It's Essence Hair Studio. I'm also the mother of Monica Ross and the grandmother of Dante. And I stand on behalf of my baby girl. You know, she had a meeting with the DA on Friday morning to discuss the case and the release of some of those that had already been caught in this incident. But you know, the DA didn't even care enough to have the file with her. You know, and then she calls the detectives, and they never return calls. So, you know, I like to address this to the chief. You know, it needs to be better communications in situations like this. Thank you.
Ms. Ross?
Yes, I would like to speak on that. I met with the district attorney. Yes, I went and met with the district attorney on Friday. They didn't have the file for my son. It would be 5 months, the 12th of February, that my son been killed. It was 5 people in the car. Only 3 of them been charged, 1 of them out. And I asked the DA why all of them not being charged with murder. This was premeditated. They went over there to do what they did, thought my son was somebody else, and just started shooting. 32 rounds. And as an example I give, I was with someone in October. They used counterfeit money. I didn't. They got caught, and by me being with them, they charged me also. Lost my job of 12 years. So my thing was, why they not being charged? And I asked them, if he was white, everybody in the car would have been charged with murder. So, I mean, right now, I'm just upset of what's going on. The DA finally got in touch with me now, last week. It's been 5 months. I've been calling. Nobody called me back. I called the detective. He have an attitude towards me. I'm like, well, you might not care, but that's my son. I was a single parent of 4 kids. I raised my kids, and I think I did a real good job by myself.
Mr. Gray?
Just kind of addressing what Ms. Ross was speaking about. I actually know the DA that she's referring to, Ms. Sullivan. She's a very smart, very capable district attorney. I think the issue that we're looking at from the prosecution side of things is that Ms. Sullivan has her case, but she also has another 200 cases as well. So in trying to, I guess, adequately address every single case that we have, the court systems are overflooded. You have a system that moves very slow. Clearly nothing is going to happen with that case prior to Ms. Sullivan consulting you, Ms. Ross. I'm sure Mr. Chief Roundtree can address this, but as far as the individuals that were charged, we have to have probable cause in order to charge anybody with a crime. We can't just throw that out there. and assess charges based on hearsay. And so I'm not being familiar with your particular case or reading a police report under these circumstances. I just want the community to understand, like, white, black, or brown, we can't charge without PC. So, and I feel sorry for you, Ms. Ross. I'm sure Ms. Sullivan is going to do a great job for you, and she's a great district attorney. So.
And Mr. Gray, we thank you for your comments. Ms. Ross and Ms. Richardson, please make sure you see us after the meeting, and we'll try to work on moving your case forward the best we can. And I'm a man of my word. We'll talk about it after the meeting. We'll move forward on it. Yes, sir.
Hey, my name is Marcus.
Apologize.
Hey, my name is Marcus, and first I'd just like to say, I'm sorry for your loss and everything. I was also indirectly affected by some of the shootings and that went on in the previous year. I'm sorry about that. But there's a couple of things that I've been listening to that have really got me kind of frustrated. I keep hearing everyone saying it takes a village to raise a child, which is true. But let's also remind ourselves what happens to any village that has a lack of resources? What happens to any place that doesn't have enough supplements to supply for that area? Violence is going to arise. It's just that simple. You want to know how to stop the violence, you have to apply resources. If you put one gun in a village with over an abundance of resources, the gun is never going to get fired off. There's just no need for it. But if you put a gun in an area that has a lack of resources, it's going down at night. And I'm telling you this just because I'm a representative of the hood that is not being reached today. I found out about this event because my friend Aaron Rutherford, he is one of the few that got a second chance. And he told me about it. And I'm in Cherry Street. I'm on Cherry Street faithfully every day. That's my area. BDP, Cherry, Garfield, that's where I'm at. And that's the community that I affect and that affects me on a day-to-day basis. Just like the gentleman said, he's on 17th CK, it's real like that though. So also just remember that the main resources that we need are money and education. The brother who was just over there on the corner, he's not there anymore, but he was just talking about how he got some inmates or, they were out of jail or something like that, but they got them to start making money out of a business because they learned to invest in themselves. When are we going to learn to invest in ourselves as a village or community? See, because the biggest thing that's going on right now is there's a gap between our age and like the bishop's age, and there's a very wide range of money involved just in these two age groups, the 18 to 35 and the 35 and up. It's the marginalization or the prejudice that's going on in our community that stops us from lifting as one. See, it has really nothing to do with racism and, the police. I mean, we're already accustomed to that. We're already accustomed to racism, and, that's what this country's built off of. What we need to focus on is coming together as a people so we can come up and rise as one. So, Bishop, please don't feel disgusted when you see a whole lot of white people coming out to hand out backpacks for our kids. Like, my brother tell you right now, ain't nobody hurting for no backpack that really needs one in the hood. That ain't number like $5. A dope boy is going to drop $20 on 4 kids to have backpacks if it's really that serious. We don't need backpacks, we need schools. We don't need books, we need daycares. We need opportunity. We need money to come in and generate within our village, this village that it takes to raise a child. We need the money to circulate through that village so then that we can come up as a people, and then we can be looked at against these other races in a more respectable light. Because as long as we're fighting, or as long as we're diversified amongst each other, then there's no reason for anyone else to assist us. See what I'm saying? So, you know, just like the brother was saying, like, he say, where are y'all at? Just like you saying, where are y'all at when you do the backpack, you know, the backpack giveaway. He's saying, where y'all at on 17th? He ain't seen you giving no backpacks out over there. So the whole thing is, let's come together. And like, just like I was saying, I'm representing the hood that don't know about this. Like I said, my friend is 1 in a million who got a second chance. And I just happened to hear about this today. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm on Cherry Street every day faithfully throughout the week. I'm in your local neighborhood on the east side every day. I just don't see that mentorship, you know what I'm saying? Just like someone was saying earlier about, you know, kids are not in school, but yet you can see them walking around, everything, who's doing the monitoring. We should have mentors right there then, you know what I'm saying? Like, even if they ain't gonna go to school, somebody give them something to do so they don't go and do something stupid. You know what I'm saying? When we invest in ourselves, then we can go ahead and stop the violence and rise as a people.
Thank you for your comments, Mr.
Councilmember Taylor, can I speak to that? Sir, first of all, to educate you, the backpacks are not just backpacks. They're backpacks with food in them. The food is given out at the school, and they put them in backpacks so that none of the kids feel discriminated against or the kids know that they're getting food. So it's a discreet way of giving food for the kids to take home. So it's very important that they get these backpacks because a lot of kids don't have the food at home. Second of all, we do have resources in our community. If you do your research, African Americans spend more money on clothes and things that are not necessary. Air Force Ones, Coogi sweaters. We have resources to do what we need to do, but we don't always make the right choices.
In the interest of time, we've got 15 minutes.
Well, I mean, just to retort, you know, to that, I'm not saying that we don't.
You keep it brief, Mr. Lawrence.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that we don't have the money. I'm saying we need to come together so we can make the money work together. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Efren Gwan Muhammad. I'm the Winston-Salem representative of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I've listened to what everyone has had to say here today, and I've learned. A lot of brothers and sisters have spoke to the problem, and money is a part of the solution. Education is a part of the solution. Parenting is a part of the solution. But in short, it's love, which has not been mentioned today. And I'm sure Pastor Fulton would appreciate this. In the book of Hosea, there's a scripture that says, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge." Right. Not for the lack, hear me out, not for the lack of Prada, not for the lack of Chanel, not for the lack of a master's or a PhD, but for a lack of knowledge. But what kind of knowledge? The black community, and I'll say this real simply, and I'm not going to take a long time, is under attack. We're under attack from two enemies. One on the outside, an old enemy that has been our enemy for 500 years since we've been in this country called America. But then there's another enemy. That's the enemy of ignorance and self-hatred. It's the enemy that took our sister's son. That's why I said love is the solution. Because if that young man who took our sister's son's life knew who he was and loved himself, he could never pull the trigger on his brother. But he didn't see him as a brother, he saw him as a nigger. So we have to begin with love in our homes, in the church, in the mosque, in the institutions. We cannot continue to put the blame solely on our politicians. Now, I know, Councilman Taylor, we're talking about violence in Winston-Salem, but there are macro causes for the violence, because even though we are dealing with the violence of the poor, no one is dealing with the violence of the wealthy. So, brothers and sisters, I'm just going to say this. I would hope that we sincerely come together out of a spirit of brotherhood to save our young people. Bishop Fulton talked about Chicago, the south side of Chicago, which is like a war zone. But that's being played out all over the United States of America. And in fact, the Department of Homeland Security in 2012 ordered 750 million rounds of ammunition. That's not the military, that was the Department of Homeland Security. What does the government know at the highest that the people of America are totally unaware of? The American economy is collapsing before our eyes. We have to come together as a people in the spirit of love and put away egos. This is good as a first start, but we have to come together away from the cameras. Because as I said, we have two enemies. And sometimes when we come together as a family, and when you come together as a family, you don't invite everyone into your family business. Because when we try to come together, then there are obstacles that are put before us. We have to remember that we have enemies among us. And I'll end with this. I'll end with a quote from Jesus. Jesus said, the Master said, oh yeah, a Muslim, no greater love has any man than this, that he lay down his life for his friend. Are we willing to come together, lower our egos, our titles, and come together to save our youth? Bishop Fulton, I'm with you. We can't ask our young brothers in the community to stop gang banging, Bloods and Crips, yet we politically gang bang. You're a Democrat, I'm a Republican. We religiously gang bang. I'm a Methodist, you're a Baptist. I'm a Christian, you're a Muslim. How can we encourage the young people to come together when we, their fathers, their mothers, their elders, don't come together? So we, the Nation of Islam, under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, without fanfare, without publicity, have been going into cities all around America. Here in Winston-Salem, we've been going all up and in and out of East Winston, knocking on doors with a spirit of love and brotherhood. And we invite those who are serious, who just don't want to talk about it but want to be about it. Our people are suffering. That you come out with us to offer them a spirit of love. In some of these communities, we have stopped young men from killing each other with no grants, with no money, with no backup. It's out of a spirit of love, and that is our plea today. And I want to thank the panel, and I want to thank you, Councilman Taylor, because we need strong politicians like you that are not afraid, who do not just come see us when there's voting time. Because I see you in the good work that you do, brother. And I hope that we see our other politicians following your example. Thank you.
Before Mr. Fleming speaks, just a time check. We've got 10 minutes. We want to get you in and out on time. From here on out, we'll stop the conversations from the audience at the end of the last person on both sides. We'll hear from you, Mr. Fleming. I know some of the council members want to say a couple of words, and we want to get you in and out on a timely manner. Yes, sir.
I want to respond to Brother Muhammad's. Assalamu alaikum. Me, myself, I'm a follower of the 5% Nation of Guards and Nurses. So, peace. So, you understand, like, you spoke on love. So we share the same jewels pretty much. You know, love is the highest elevation of understanding. So therefore, you know, you can't love nothing unless you understand what you love about it, why you love it. So, in other words, I'm saying, like, if you're a stranger to me, how am I love you? I understand nothing about you. Love is something that has to be gained. That's nothing that comes instantaneously. You understand what I'm saying? Then you spoke on knowledge. You know, knowledge is broken down to know the ledge, which is true. Everybody keep talking about resources. We need resources. What are the resources? All I heard is the word resource, but I have yet to hear one resource. You understand what I'm saying? So, but that's peace, though, man.
If you provide some type of resource, some type of mentoring program, if you're on behalf of some type of organization, please just raise your hand. And I wish we had time to hear every resource, but all of my resource folks, while we're taking the last few questions, please make your way down to the front. And before you leave, let's talk about some of the resources that we have in the room. I think some of the members of the City Council may have some ideas on some of the resources we can put into our community, but we don't want to just bring you here and have you talk. We wanted to take some time and put forth action, but I don't know if we'll have time to do that today, but we'll try to get in and out as fast as we can. Yes, sir. I think this side went already. This side, thank you. I stand corrected. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Ford Hall.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Regina Ford Hall. Grew up, part of my childhood was spent in Stonewall. The other part was spent in the City View area on the east side. And now I am a member of the sensational Southeast Ward.
Yeah.
And so I also am the president of my homeowners association. What I would like to see is a part 2 to this, right?
We're going to have to do it.
I would like to see this conversation go outside of these walls. I would have loved to see for this room to be entirely filled tonight. I would love to see something like a part 2 of what Nicole Little put together on the east side for the rally of Trayvon Martin. That was a huge success. We had people from all over Winston-Salem and friends from Greensboro that even came. I would love to see community organizers like Nikita McDaniel to help us and actually organize community events where we can get young people and older people to help. So what I would like is when all of these folks that say that they are connected with resources and have all that, I would love for you all to get their information. I would love to take this to the streets. I would love to have our council members and our city manager to help us to organize these community rallies. Chief Roundtree, maybe if you can have some of your guys out there, and maybe Ed to help with our marketing or something like that, so that we can really have the support of our city council, Mayor Joins, and everyone else, and not just do this on the east side, not just do this on the southeast side, but to do this across Winston-Salem. We have got to move this conversation. It does us absolutely no good to sit right here in Winston-Salem State in a half-packed room to talk about what we can do and not take it to the streets. We have got to mobilize, and we've got to do that. If not, what is our time for here? If not, what is the conversation about? We know what we need to do, but I would like to challenge everyone, especially the assistants of council, of our city manager, of our mayor, of Chief Roundtree, and everyone else that can. I would love to see a part 2, and I would love for our community organizers to help with that, especially all the city natives. We got to do it. For everybody that has moved back home and wants to see us survive and do well, we got to do that. That is my challenge, and I personally commit to helping with that.
Thank you. Is everybody okay with seeing a part 2 to this? Please, yeah, by show of applause, please. Make sure we get your information out front. There were some tables with your email address, numbers, names. We want to get it, and we'll contact you for a part 2. We're running out of time. Mr. Harrison.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm actually going to come up and put up a plan for you that may help on some of this stuff we're going through tonight. And first of all, before I do that, I just want to explain to everyone who I am so you know where I'm coming from. I was born and raised in East Winston. I had a mother and father. My dad pushed education from day one, and out of 5 children in our house on the east side, none were arrested, and we all went to college after we finished high school. Both of them, my dad was a hard-working factory man, and so we made it over there. But we were still, only time we saw the police was when somebody was getting arrested. We only saw them on TV, or we saw somebody getting arrested. On top of that, the main thing, I'm also a former police officer. I joined the force in 1980. And what happened, the only reason I joined the police department, because I was a school teacher in Virginia, and I came back home, and I saw this officer on the block, and he was someone I went to school with. And I said, well, if he can do it, I know I can do it. So I went and joined the police department. And when I first joined the police department, some of you old timers may realize this, but I know the young timers don't. There was one restaurant in East Winston that stayed open 24 hours. It was a Holly Farms on Liberty Street. But they had so much problems up there with robberies, fights, and when the clubs turned out, it was just a mess up there. Where these older black officers said, that's enough of this. We're going to make that our office. And they made that their office. They taught young timers like me about that, and we closed that place. We had that place open for everyone that wanted to come there for a purpose to eat and talk and enjoy themselves. I don't think we ever had another fight or robbery or anything else up there, but the business did finally close up. And it was kind of selfish of us also because not the only place to eat in East Winston on midnight eating shift. So, you know, it was served both hands. And I'm saying that to bring up how I approach police work. In the late 1980s, this city had 45 homicides. They set a record. I don't think they ever reached that again. The majority of them were in the Cleveland Avenue homes. The residents in the Cleveland Avenue homes were their ladies, elderly ladies were sleeping in bathtubs and all that at night to try all the gunfire going on at night. So they finally said enough is enough. They went down to the city council members and said we wanted foot patrol in our neighborhood. So they got foot patrol over there. And the police went over there with an attitude of kick butts and take names. That's how they were going to straighten things out. Well, then they got in trouble. Something happened where it didn't go right, and a big mess happened. So they put me in charge of the foot patrol. And the first thing I noticed when I got over there was when something happened, there was a fight or something like that, you're surrounded by about 100 and something people. And you don't know whose side they're going to be on. They know the people that's fighting, they don't know you. So we tried to change the mentality of that community over there. And we did things like, this goes back to my upbringing, where I talked about when I was a rookie police officer. We did everything from clothing drives to toy drives to youth clubs to taking kids to universities to visit universities and you know, push the importance of education. And we also did police work. But what people failed to realize was a lot of officers they did not want to do that. But they was afraid. They said, we just came here that we want to make arrests. Well, that actually increased our arrests because people trust us to give us information about what's going on over there, to help us clean the community up. And that's where we worked at. And the other thing, Mr. Taylor, where I met him at, I was also president of the Winston-Salem NAACP for 6 years here. And as president, I used to go to all these schools. This is where schools come in with violence and everything. All of it connected together. These kids get kicked out of school and they can't do anything else. The drug dealer out there on the block, so he get involved in that. A shooting go down, the kid might get shot. There's all of it runs together. But I had so many complaints at a middle school that I had to go to one year. And every time I went there, I had to be honest, the kid wasn't completely innocent, never. He always did something wrong. I may have disagreed with the punishment he got or how they treated him, but he did do something wrong to bring that pressure down on him. So I realized the administrators and the teachers at that school, they were good people. They were trying to do the best they can to educate these children. And they used to ask me hard questions like, Harrison, how can I can't let one kid to keep 24 kids from learning. So I said, let's try to work with them, get on the front side of these kids get in trouble. And that's where I met Mr. Taylor. We formed a group, and we asked the school, and to be politically correct, I'm going to see how I word this right. We asked them to give us your most likely kids that would not make it through the school year without getting in trouble. So they gave us these hardcore kids to work with. And we worked with them all year long. And that first year, we had the money, we could do things, took them to basketball games, we took them to court, see Miss Hartfield, down to Judge Hartfield, talk to them, and everything else. And that first year, None of those kids got put out of school, all of them finished. They even went down in front of the school board and made a speech about it. The school board was so impressed with it. But like you say, when you're dealing with volunteer groups, you got to have the money, you got to have the volunteers, so some of that kind of dried up a little bit. But my recommendation is this: you got to latch on to the kids when they're young. You got to form a partnership. You got to let them see a different way of doing things, a good way of doing things. And the police department, what I would say to them is, each officer has a beat, has an assignment. I would claim that beat or assignment as my own. This is my place. You don't mess up in it without me knowing about it. Do whatever you have to do to learn the people in that community, let the people get to know you, and also in the public. It's your part too. We can easily put everything on the police department. I now work part-time in recruiting down the police department in background investigation. And I'm always going out in the city every time I see a group of young black males and black women too, ask them, why don't y'all consider a profession in the police department? And they look at me like I slapped their mama or something. I mean, it's so foreign to them. That thought never entered their mind. But if you got to complain about something and you want to change something, it's easier to change it on the inside. And the police department are looking for minorities, men and women, to join the police department. Now, we getting some, but I'm gonna hurry up and speed it right here. We getting them from up north, we getting them from out of town or wherever we can get them from. But I think it's important to get some local people who know the community, to know the people, and have some investment in the community. And those are my recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison.
And I need all y'all help sell that.
All right, family, we're at the end of this thing. Please, we've got 4 more. And I said family, we're family, right? We've got 4 more. Stay with me. We want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to be heard. So we're alternating, and please, those folks who are speaking for the audience, be respectful of the time of those who are here. We want to respect each other both ways, and members of the panel. Yes, sir, Mr. Radio.
Oh, okay. I was standing here so long, I thought I was growing old. But, all right, so today I came to this forum to hear a lot of questions about what you guys are going to do in the communities in Winston-Salem. I love hearing these philosophical quotes and things like that you want to improve in the community. But I really want to know, what are you going to do today after this whole entire meeting? Like, what kind of funding are you going to put into education? What kind of funding are you going to put into actually getting gun laws in place so that way there won't be these high ammunition rifles and things like that? Because even though, yeah, we have this gun buyback program, as you hear or heard, that it's unsuccessful. So I want to know what kind of real laws that you're going to put in. Also, another thing is, we talked a lot about the children and how we're going to mentor them and how we're going to save them, and et cetera, et cetera. So what kind of funding are you going to put in these communities to have kids to go into these neighborhoods to be safe? Have rec centers, or build a gym, or have these art centers, or something that these kids can go into, so that way they can stay out of trouble. Because when I was doing like a neighborhood assessment couple of months ago, a lot of things that people told me was that they need something for the kids to go to. The fact that since funding has been cut back so much in Winston-Salem, and not just here but everywhere else, there's not a place for these kids to go to stay out of trouble. And I figured, like the guy in the purple hoodie said, you know, we have to nip this at the bud. So, like, what are you guys going to do, well, like, as a whole? And
I'll try to answer that briefly.
Like, first, everything.
I'll try to answer it all briefly.
Yes.
First of all, this money school system, that's more of a school board. We have a school board that deals with that.
Yes.
Yes. Federally, the city council doesn't regulate gun control. That is a federal issue. But what we can do with gun control is look at things like the buyback program. One of the things we're looking at doing, and everybody heard me say, is we're trying to decentralize the public safety center. What that means is getting police officers out in community in what's called district offices. We're looking at a site on the North Ward. We've got a site in the Southeast Ward, the Nissan Wagon Works building, right up from the Family Dollar. Let's see. I've talked to the city manager and some of my colleagues. One of the things we don't have in the city of Winston-Salem is an office of reentry. And there are a number of groups that deal with reentry. We've got Mr. Thomas on the end and some of the folks on the panel. But what I'm proposing is that we start maybe an office of reentry where we consolidate all of these resources, all of the programs, everybody who raised their hand here. We need to have an office that brings everybody together, allocates the proper amount of resources. And what those people don't know, every year the city council gives roughly, I would say, $1 million. Roughly $1 million to community organizations. The reason why we don't get resources is because we're not in the room. And what I need to do, and what we need to do, is a better job letting you know when to come down to City Hall and request those resources. And that's something that I will get better at, making sure, and that's why we need your name and your contact information, Mr. Radio.
Also, too, like, not only doing the gun back, the program, but also put more pressure on the local level to push these legislation for gun violent control, et cetera, not just waiting on them to do something. We need to, yeah, like you said, have more communities, more organizations to be more involved and be more aware of this.
The last thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to go to you, young lady. If this many people came down to City Hall, we can get anything we wanted done in the city of Winston-Salem. And it's not just standing here in these types of forums. Come down to City Hall. Make your voice heard. If you don't know when the meetings are, everything's public, everything's online. It's time out to start talking about the problem. It's time to start coming down and getting the problem solved. And the way you do that is you speak to your legislators. You let them know if you don't do what we ask you to do, we're not going to vote for you. And I guarantee you, you will get a listening ear. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Lakia Baldwin, and I am a LCAS, a licensed clinical addiction specialist, and also a LPCA. And I have heard a lot of things tonight about the schools and the children and everything, but I have not heard about mental health. And mental health is serious. It is. And I think that I work with youth and I work with adults, and I've been to a lot of schools around Winston-Salem, and the things that I've heard from the children are, you know, new level, new devil. They have bullying on the internet. They have guns in the home that's not being locked up properly. I mean, they have so many different things that's going on in their lives now that where are the mental health programs locally in Winston-Salem for them and the parents? I mean, we have to look at, you know, a holistic approach when we talk about the kids. And I'm not talking about Medicaid funded programs. I'm talking about programs that are really here to help the children and adults in Winston-Salem deal with the things that's going on in today's society. We can't depend on our past successes to help us in the future. We have to depend on what's going on right now. So we have to hit the mental health aspect of it as well when we talk about you know, raising I mean, it takes a village to raise a child. So we also have to worry about, you know, addictions as well. So I mean, I just want to hear from like the doctors that's on the panel as well as far as mental health is concerned.
And I mentioned mental health in the very beginning when I talked about my research and community work with law enforcement and mental health. And so the Mental Health Association in Forsyth County actually does work. But I believe last year they had something here at Winston-Salem State University. So if you want contact with Andy Hagel at the Mental Health Association, you can talk to me afterwards.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on the mental health piece?
No, I also touched on that, and I think that goes back to what I call the micro level, and that's the individual. We didn't talk more about mental health, and as much as people talked about love and the individual and this idea of self-efficacy, a lot of that comes from healing broken and fragmented individuals. So you're touching on something that's very important. Another thing, sometimes in the African American and even Latino community, there are stigmas that, you know, allow us from not accessing. We won't access resources like that because we say, well, nothing's wrong with me, or this has been in my family for years, or these different types of things, and we struggle with depression and some other things. So that is huge. That is something very important. We need to, again, think about how do we link mental health into education, into wraparound services, into prison re-entry programs, because that's a huge component into the success of our community.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. If you'll get with Dr. Henderson and Dr. Dennis, we'll try to get you some help. Yes, sir. Our last two.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. This is a beautiful panel. I want to say, first of all, my name is Dion. I'm striving to be a better man, better father, and a better example on the principles that I stand on. I start off like that because I don't want to speak in a self-righteous way or hypocritical way. Two things I want to say. I have much to say in response to all that was said, but two things I'm going to say because I know we have to be brief. When it was said that the ones that can identify with the hood, the two brothers on the end, one thing the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, he said, no one man can rise above the condition of his people. So this is to those who may not have identified with, as the brother said, the hood. That's powerful knowledge and that's wisdom that I want to share, that no one man can rise above the condition of his people, no matter what stage of life our people may see themselves in. The second thing, brother, you said something about love. You have to know each other. I have to disagree with you, because one thing that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said is love is an action. I say that to say you got a young brother that got arrested the other day, 18 years old, in Rolling Hill Projects. His mother called me, said they arrested him for drugs and possibly planted drugs on him. I told her I would support her son and be at the courthouse Monday at 2 o'clock. His name is Javonta Landford. So when we say, what are we going to do, like the brother that was here before me, what are we going to do after this? I'm going down there to support the brother. Because when I was in that life, the same thing happened to me. Drugs was planted on me by the police department. This is very real. So I'm going down to support this brother. So to you, brother, as the representative, a local representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, beautiful thing that he said as well as everybody else, love is an action, just to share with you, brother. So I'm going down there. I don't know this brother, but based on his mother calling me, I'm going to be down there. My older brother, that's Ishmael Muhammad, that stood up, he'll be there. My daughter's in the back, 12 years old. Well, that's my other daughter, 15 years old. I'm going to take her out of school. She'll be there. My 12-year-old daughter be there. I'm taking her out of school. My son is a local hip-hop artist in the community. His name's Amir, very known amongst the teenagers in college now. I'm taking my family down there to support this one brother I don't know. But I love him because love is an action coming from knowledge first in order to grow into love. So I just wanted to say that brief, much to say, but nevertheless, I just wanted to say that. And thank you whoever set this panel up, beautiful panel. We need this more.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank
Can
you.
I say something, please? Can I say something, please?
Please do.
To my brother right here, man. I didn't say love wasn't action. I said love is gained. Love is the highest elevation of understanding, and it can't be acted upon until it's first it is understood. So if you don't understand love, it ain't no acting upon it. You got to gain an understanding of what love is first before you can even think about acting upon it. So, but that's what I said, just to make myself clear.
We appreciate the clarity, brother. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for being so patient.
You're welcome. My name is Deanna Frazier. I'm also an ITT Tech institutional student for criminal justice. I graduate in June of this year, but
we need to celebrate that.
But what I really wanted to touch on, I had actually two things I wanted to touch on. One, many people up there have stated that everyone has a choice. I believe that cold-hearted. Everyone does have a choice. But you have individuals who aren't strong enough to stand up for what they believe in. So I feel as though most crimes are committed through the social learn theory. They learn off of what they see. And learning what they see, that's what they're going to do. So if they don't have the people that's teaching them or trying to help them be the stronger person that they need to be, they're going to fall back into this hole and they're going to do what they see everybody else is doing. You don't have everybody that's strong enough like me. I'm going to make a choice. I grew up on the South Side, so I know how it is to come from poverty and everything. But I chose, because I'm that strong individual that chose to go on to college and pursue my education. But you have the ones out here who get sidetracked because they're not strong enough to stand up. So they stand up with the people who are doing the wrong thing because that's the only thing they know how to do. And another thing I wanted to talk on is you have the small businesses within the community who have programs for the youth but don't have the funds.
And many organizations overlook that because they're smaller organizations. You just have to, you have to start small. I feel as though you have to start small to get bigger. And that's just what I want to say.
Thank you. The resounding comments that I've heard is mentoring and resources. And those who are stroking your pens, please write this down. My email address is James, James, T, like Taylor, Jr. like Junior. James T. Jr. at cityofws.org. If there are any organizations that wish to apply for city funding, please send me an email, and I will do my best to get that over to the management department, and we will try, I will fight to get your particular organization funded, because in order to move forward, we've got to have funding. Yes, ma'am. Southside Rise. We've got your request in already. Mr. Dave Moore has put it in for this year. All hearts and minds clear? I want to thank everybody for coming out today. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. McNeil. Before I do that, please don't leave. Give us 2 more minutes. I want to recognize a couple of people to help to pull this thing together. One of the gentlemen is right beside me, Mr. Ed McNeil. Please give him a round of applause.
It's all good.
Lastly, this young lady works hard as the community relations person for the Winston-Salem Police Department. She helped to bring all the panelists together, and everybody you see here, please give a warm round of applause. She's right behind you for Ms. Pam Peoples-Joyner. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our participants. I'll turn this part of the program over to Mr. Ed McNeil.
Thank you, Council Member, and also, again, thank you to the panel for taking time to be here today. City Council continues to want to hear what you have to say. As you heard, Council Member Taylor gave you his email address. The city also has something called the Citizen Feedback Line, and we've set that line up with a message so that if you had something that you wanted to share, you didn't get an opportunity today, you can call us. Grab that pen again. The number is 734-1400. That's 734-1400. That's the Citizen Feedback Line, and what we do is we go in, we take those messages, and we make them back available to the City Council so they can have the information that they need. If there's nothing else, thank you all for coming. Again, thank you to Winston-Salem State University for allowing us to be here today. Thank you all so much. Be safe going home.